this episode, I will be reviewing the book Perfect. A girl, a group, and an eating disorder. This book will make you laugh, cry, and you will not be able to put it down. Perfect is indeed perfect in so many ways. This book tells the story of a girl, just like any other teenage girl, who has developed an eating disorder after the death of her beloved father, where she binges on food and then vomits. The author of Perfect makes you feel so many emotions toward the characters in this book. Isabel, who is the main character of this book, seems very sad throughout the whole book, but I feel like the author made it so you would feel bad for her because of what she's going through. There is also Isabel's sister, who Isabel calls Apeface. Although she doesn't show it, Apeface is actually very sad about the loss of her father. But I think she was trying to seem strong in front of her mother and her older sister. Isabel's mother is also extremely sad because she had just lost her husband. Her children, Apeface and Isabel, desperately want their old mom back and would stop at nothing to get that. And the author really showed the emotions they were feeling, and I appreciated that while I was reading this book. This book took place mostly in Isabel's home, but sometimes she would be at school or in group. I love this book so much because I find mental health very interesting and so complex, and I'm happy that people are starting to talk about it more and more. People sometimes overlook the fact that eating disorders are real and that we should spread way more awareness about it because it is getting even more common. We are mostly only talking about young girls with bulimia. However, we don't really realize that men and boys are also struggling with this disorder. I do know that it is way less common for males, but I think we should be talking about everyone with this disorder. Isabel overcame so many obstacles. The author made it very easy for us to feel very bad for Isabel because she has been through so much. Isabel's father had just passed, and her mother is extremely sad. It's almost as though Isabel is talking about her life to the reader. The book is so well thought out that you could picture everything that's happening in your mind, word for word. Perfect is an amazing book that shows so much emotion and is very down to earth about the reality of eating disorders. Personally, I've never experienced any type of eating disorder, but this book explains the reality of what these disorders can do to you. When Isabel threw up for the first time, I automatically felt as though she was one of my loved ones and that I have known her for a very long time. For whatever reason, I was kind of mad at Isabel's mom because she was never there for her daughter, and that made me pretty mad. But when I figured out what happened to her, I started to have some sympathy for her, and my sympathy gradually grew bigger for her as the story went on. I personally feel as though what happened to Isabel, the more sorry you feel for her mother and of course Isabel. I feel like all Isabel really needed during the time of her treatments was just a really good friend who gave her advice and who listened to her problems. And I feel like she would have greatly benefited from that type of friendship instead of the toxic friendship she was in the book. I actually wouldn't say that Isabel and Ashley's friendship was toxic, but it was just a little sad to see that she was throwing up with Ashley because I really wanted her to get better. Ashley did not help with Isabel's disorder. However, I feel like Isabel started to realize what this eating disorder is doing to her and that she actually needs help and that she cannot get better alone. I was very happy when she finally started listening to her group leader. If only Isabel listened to her group therapy leader and wrote in her journal, I feel like she would have been way better off. But again, this book would not be as good if they just cut it off right when she started going to group. I also like this book a lot because the author was very respectful and educated on the subject of mental health, and I really appreciated that while reading this book. I feel like a lot more people should be reading this book because it spreads awareness and sort of educates you on what's going on in people's lives and what could be happening in yours. I would honestly rate this book a 10 out of 10 because it is exactly what people look for in a book about mental health. This book has all the elements I'm looking for: Perfect is funny, deep, relatable, and so much more. Isabel really reflects almost any other teenage girl because she hides everything until someone tries to talk to her about what's going on inside her head. And I think that's what makes this book so good, is because it is very relatable and it is exactly what some girls or boys need, and I know that for a fact. This is probably one of my favorite books now. I highly recommend this book to anyone.